Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm still Tim, and I would like now to talk to you about Vox Pupuli and the community behind Puppet. Nothing has really changed here, but keep in mind, I'm one of the PMC members, and in this talk you will actually get in touch with the PMC and learn what it actually does and stands for. So, let's start with Vox Pupuli. So, what is Vox Pupuli? It's a group of developers and system administrators that maintain many Puppet modules. Besides that, it's a community that is very helpful and always polite to each other, which means that there are 24/7 people available on IRC, sadly now also on Slack, and we are responding to questions about how to use Git, how do I rebase my branch, what is the difference between a fork and the upstream repo, how do I use Puppet, how does RSpec work, why is Beaker broken again, can somebody please release module XYZ, could you migrate a module, stuff like this. We are open to everything and yeah, focused very on Puppet. It's a very open-minded community, open-minded to new people but also to new technology. That means that if somebody would like to contribute, we easily hand out merge access to our repositories. That's not a process that takes several years or several months. That works way faster because we would like to encourage new users to actually work in the community and bring yourself in. Also open to new technology. That means recently somebody asked us if you're interested in mirroring our stuff from GitHub to GitLab. And we said, sure, we are fine. If you want to do this, just start over, write some documentation. If you need any certain permission on one of the tools that we have, just let us know and do whatever you wouldn't want to do. Another person wanted to write a custom IRC bot in Python because he had to use Python as work. He liked to hang out on IRC, so we thought like, it might be a good challenge for him to write a bot, and if he asks us if we are interested in hosting this bot in our IRC channel, yeah, sure. Most of us do a lot of Ruby work or Puppet work, but we don't care about the language that something is written in. If somebody would like to write something in Python, that's totally fine, and now we have an IRC bot that can automate certain things for us. One of the goals that we have is to provide a home for orphaned Puppet modules. Very often you are searching for a very specific module for your use case that you have on the Puppet Forge, and because you want to automate Jenkins. So you find a module, it's the first on the list, you check it out, and you notice the module is quite outdated. And that's a very frustrating experience that no user should run into this. And that's the kind of thing that we would like to avoid. And also, as a maintainer, it's very annoying to work alone on a module. So we try to unite the module authors to form a collective. Because as a group, you're way stronger than a single or maybe two developers. And with this collective, we try to ensure a continued development of our code base, and this works quite well at the moment. So, who is part of Vox Pupuli? At the moment, we have 126 people in our GitHub organization with merge access to around 105 modules, 110, so quite a huge amount. Way more modules than Puppet itself is hosting on Puppet Forge. They have around 40 or 50, I think. Just a few of the people that contribute to Vox Pupuli are working for Puppet, so we are independent from the company. They are quite nice for us. For example, we got some fancy stickers, if anybody would like to have some afterwards, and also little boxes. So come to me after the talk. Besides that, most of the people contribute in their spare free time, and many of them are administrators at work that have to deal with Puppet to deploy several services. Most of them work alone on their Puppet code base, or maybe in a very, very small team that's not the size that it should actually be, maybe just 2 or 3 people. Somebody told me a talk has always contained a chart, because a chart is related to science, so I made a very fancy chart. I tried to automate the chart with ticks, which I spent around 4 hours trying to automatically create a very fancy chart, and after 4 hours I threw everything away, and I did this in LibreOffice in like 2 minutes or something. Okay, awesome technology, yeah. What do we actually see here? This is the amount of people in our GitHub organization, and it's constantly growing. The flow looks a bit weird because of the time frames where we measure this. This mostly only happens when somebody does a talk about Vox Pupuli and writes the number down, and every time somebody does a talk, the slide gets extended. Yeah. So, who else do we have? So, most of the contributors are very new to Git. As I started in the community, I had the impression that the code that comes from a new contributor is bad or not as good as somebody that contributes since a longer time. As it turns out, that's completely wrong. No matter if you contribute for a longer time or if you're a newcomer, the actual code quality is mostly quite good and on an equal level. But newcomers don't know how to write a proper Git commit message, because they only, or in the past, they only used Git as an internal tool, and coworkers normally don't read your commit messages. They just don't do it. Also, most people internally don't use any kind of testing framework. They just YOLO merge to production or something. I don't know. Very, very strange. But that's not how open source works. So we have a test matrix, we enforce this, and we try to have a code coverage for every new contribution that we get. And this is the stuff that we have to teach new people. They are very good at writing Puppet code, but everything around this, the tooling, how to use Git, this is something that we have to explain and where we are trying to provide proper documentation for the people. What was our intention to found Vox Pupuli around 3 years ago? So we noticed that maintaining a Puppet module on your own is quite hard. We had a few people, for example, the collecd module and the nginx module. They were developed by 1 or 2 people, and they grow quite fast, and they got a huge amount of users. And this is bad because users raise issues, and you feel responsible for this. So you want to fix the issues, but also you sometimes want to eat or sleep or attend a work that's paid. Yeah, so it's always not so easy to figure out how much time to invest in which cases. And if your module is quite famous, it's just not possible to maintain this on your own. That doesn't work out. Also, people from time to time simply lose their interest to maintain something like this in their private time or in their free time. Also, sometimes you go on vacation, I hope so at least, or you lose interest or you switch jobs. So it's way, way easier to maintain something like this in a community. Also, besides writing the actual Puppet code, testing can be quite painful. Puppet, the different versions run on different Ruby versions. So you should test your code base on different Ruby versions, on different Puppet versions, and this results in a quite complex test matrix that you have to adjust from time to time. To use all the tests, like RSpec and Beaker that Martin already mentioned, you need a lot of Ruby gems. Also, Ruby gems have versions. They depend on very specific Ruby versions, so you end up in a dependency hell, which is very, very annoying. Also, we use Rubocop as a linter for our tests itself and for Puppet types and providers to enforce a unified code style across all modules that we have. And Rubocop is listed on purpose twice because it's twice the pain than the rest of this list. And nobody should deal with this in their free time. That's just freaking annoying. So how do we do this? Module sync was already mentioned today. We have a huge amount of modules, and there are certain files that are always identical. For example, the contributing.md, where we define how you can check out a repository, how you can run the tests. There are other files that are almost identical. For example, the gem file, our rake file, our Travis configuration. And keeping this in sync across all the repos is very, very annoying. So module sync takes a template repo and a configuration file and a list of all the modules, and it can iterate on all the modules that you have and apply the module-specific config to the template and generate every file that you want to have within your module. And this enables us to sync all the modules that we have, which is quite nice. This was originally developed by Puppet and handed over to the community 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and we are now maintaining it, which works quite good. We use GitHub pull requests to apply the changes. Everybody can start a module sync, even if you're not within our GitHub organization. And every of our currently 126 people can merge the pull request. So it's quite easy to apply those changes. And we're currently working on an extension so that stuff that is applied in a pull request that comes from module sync can automatically get merged. We're still discussing if we actually want this or not, but that would be possible as well. And module sync is not specific for Vox Pupuli, so you can use this for your internal modules as well. So I'm doing this at GoDaddy at the moment. We use also Travis to run our tests. Travis is a free CI platform from a company based in Berlin. Normally you get, I think, 2 concurrent jobs that you can execute in a Linux virtual machine or in a Docker container. And we defined a test matrix. As you can see, we have different Ruby versions, and we define different Puppet versions and different jobs. And this allows us to run all the tests that we have. Puppet Labs is sponsoring us some Travis slots. I think we have around 20 or 25 jobs that we can start. And yeah, this allows us to run all the tests. So very often we get the feedback from a developer that he is forced at work to develop on a CentOS 7 machine, which brings Ruby 2.0, which is outdated since ages, and this person is not able to execute our test metrics locally. That just doesn't work because Ruby is too old. But this person is not required to execute the tests locally. That's always nice. It gives you feedback way faster, but that's not a requirement. You can just commit and push, and Travis will do the work for you. Also, we want to do releases quite often of a new module. For this, we developed a Ruby gem, which is called Vox Pupuli-release. And that basically consists of a rake task that creates a Git tag, which is signed by GPG and updates the version number in the metadata.json file, pushes this to Travis, and Travis will create the actual .tar.gz file and upload it to the Puppet Forge. Before you can execute the task, you need to create a new changelog or a new entry in the changelog. And this is something that, again, everybody can contribute, even people that are not within our organization. And every of our 126 collaborators is able to execute the rake task to kick off a new release. And yeah, we have so many modules, and we try at least the approved ones to release every 2 to 4 weeks. And that just doesn't work if a single person or just a handful is responsible for releases. This is something that should be spread across everybody in the organization, and it works very well. Also, this gives some power to everybody, because he can now actually do stuff, and this enables people and encourages them to contribute. So what else do we have? We have some fancy tooling available. Community management is a set of Ruby scripts written by a Puppet Labs employee. It parses the GitHub API for open pull requests and open issues within an organization, and creates you fancy HTML tables that you can sort to see which pull requests are new and didn't get a response yet, which have a very specific label, which didn't get a response from a maintainer since 30 days, for example, and which pull requests have merge conflicts that should be solved, stuff like this, very helpful. And again, we have a very similar tool, just provides a different sorted list. And this lists us all the open pull requests that we have, which is very nice, because the default GitHub URL, the default GitHub frontend just doesn't work so nicely across multiple modules. Yeah. Also, we have the mentioned IRC bot, which is written in Python. And some time ago, I created some Ruby stats to search for contributions that a specific person did to figure out if we should ask them if they are interested in joining the community. So, also we have some fancy documentation available. Since Puppet 4. something, I think, you can write inline documentation and parse it with a project called puppet-strings, and that will generate fancy HTML output. And we configured some of our modules with this, and the documentation is available always on our website / the name of the Puppet module. And nowadays it can also generate Markdown output in a single file and not spread across multiple HTML files. This is the new approach, and we will migrate all of those modules to the new Markdown output, and the Markdown output will be within each release that we do, and it will be displayed on the Puppet Forge. So if you check for a module, there are always multiple tabs on the module view, like the license, open issues, types and providers, README, and there's a new tab called reference, and that will list all the fancy generated documentation. So, also we have a PMC, which is the Project Management Committee. This is a type of organization that we copied from the OpenStack Foundation. We noticed that as a community, you need a kind of leadership, or at least a group of people that is responsible and that you can ask for official feedback. And this is the job of the PMC. Besides that, it enforces our code of conduct that we have. And since a few years, we are trying to get into the Software Conservancy, which is, I think, a sub-organization of the Free Software Foundation. And that would allow us to act as an international legal entity, so people could spend money on us or give us co-location, dedicated servers, whatever we need, stuff like this, which would be quite helpful. The PMC does not enforce a specific direction the community should head to. This is stuff that always the community should decide on itself, but the PMC can make decisions when there isn't a clear direction visible in a very specific question. And besides the PMC group, we have another big group, which is basically everybody else. That's our collaborators. And their biggest job is to review all the pull requests that we have. Sadly, still explaining to people why we don't support Ruby 1.8.7 anymore, which is dead since 2016, 15, something like this. Nowadays, we we need to explain why we don't support Ruby 3 since beginning of this year. And on January 1st next year, we will drop Ruby 4 support, which will be end of life this year. So there's probably an upcoming task as well to explain to new people why we don't support it anymore. And as I already mentioned, helping with Git. So now I have some examples from the daily business that we do from time to time. And all the answers that most of our collaborators have to give. Yeah. We had issues from new people, and people are afraid to do a contribution because they assume that the code that they write is bad and that we would not merge it, which is rarely true. So we need to encourage those people to provide a patch, and we're always happy to guide them through how to use Git, how to write patches. If the person is not able to contribute a patch, we are happy to assist here or maybe write the patch on our own, but we always try to encourage the people to not only open an issue but also send a patch. Often we get issues. Hey, I downloaded the latest version, but it doesn't work on my Ruby 3 or my Ruby 2.7. It's like, yes, that's intentional. We don't support it anymore. Please upgrade. Sometimes we get even pull requests to enable support for Ruby 1.8, which we sadly have to decline. Sorry. But yeah, I see us as a software vendor to our users. And I think it's our responsibility to not encourage anybody to run outdated or end-of-life software. That's the reason why we don't support all the legacy Ruby and Puppet versions anymore. Also, sometimes you see this in a pull request, which looks quite confusing. This is a trick to kick off Travis again. Sometimes Travis is stuck. Recently, they had a few outages, and you have to restart jobs. In the Travis UI, you can only do this when you have admin permissions. And yeah, as a simple contributor, you don't have that. But you can always close and reopen the pull request. This will kick off Travis again, and yeah, just starts more jobs. So yeah, don't be confused by this. Yeah, you see this quite often. Thank you for your patch, but could you please add a test for this? That's probably the phrase that I use the most. And in most cases, we actually get a test afterwards. So you just need to ask the people nicely, and this works very, very good. So providing negative feedback is sometimes necessary, or in that case it should be constructive at least, but also positive feedback is very, very important. And I'm always happy when I see a new data type that gets introduced. So showing some appreciation is always important and makes the people happy. And sometimes people are not very familiar with Travis, or they just spin up a pull request and forgot that they did this. So we sometimes need to ping the people. It's like, hey, could you please have a look again? It's like, the code looks actually fine, but Travis doesn't like it because there is trailing white space, or you forgot a comma in a meta, in a JSON file, stuff like this. That's a very German phrase. So on GitHub, you can configure email addresses in your profile. And if you commit with an email address that's not linked to your profile, there isn't your icon or your avatar next to the commit, and GitHub isn't unable to associate the commit with a GitHub account. Most people or most organizations don't care about this and just merge this stuff. But we try to have a clean history, so if somebody uses the wrong email address, we try to ping them and ask if they could change this. And I think this is very important because from time to time, people commit from their internal workstation at a company, but they are not allowed to do open source during their work, but their email address is in the Git commit. So we friendly ask them, and yeah, they should check if this is actually correct or if they might want to update the email address before their line manager sees this. Yeah. And so documentation is something that people very often forgot about. We get very good code, even with tests, but it's not documented, not with inline docs for Puppet strings, but also not in the README. And this is something that, that's just bad for new people that try to use a new module. So we try to be very often ask those people to update the README with new stuff. And also people are often asking us if we're interested in migrating stuff to us. So as my earlier example, somebody finds a module on the Puppet Forge which isn't maintained since a few years and has a lot of open pull requests. We can reach out to the original maintainers and ask them if they are interested in migrating a module in our namespace so we can continue the work. That works very often if the person reads their emails. That's not always the case. If we don't get a response here, we need to head out to Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever and try to reach the people. If we don't get feedback and there is a high pressure from the community to keep working on this module, we can still fork it on GitHub, but this very often confuses people, so our preferred way is always to migrate the actual GitHub repo from one namespace to the other. And if you contribute a lot to Puppet, it might happen that somebody sends you like 4 kilograms of candy. Yeah, I think this is Haley and Eric Putman, might be their names. They invested a huge amount of time, also in their free time and on their weekends, to fix, I think, 7,000 Drupal violations in the MongoDB module and updated it to work on the latest MongoDB version. And yeah, that's some impressive work that we really need to honor. So yeah, we sent them a big box of candy. Yeah. Also, from time to time, Puppet modules break. Not always our own modules and not always our fault. But we just have so many modules with so many dependencies that in most cases, Vox Pupuli is the organization that notices breaking changes before Puppet or other big organization sees this. For example, Camp2Camp people have a lot of modules as well. The OpenStack Foundation and CERN, and of course Puppet itself. And we had a few outages in the past months. Maybe you can remember one of those, or you actually hit them. And every time you see that 10 or 15 people are popping into the Vox Pupuli RSC channel, you know that something is broken in the Puppet ecosystem. So yeah, that's very good to monitor. It's a nice metric. If we see if X people joined in the last minute, you know something is broken. Yeah. I was responsible for broken Puppet System D. I'm sorry for this, which shut down the whole OpenStack Foundation CI pipeline for a few hours because a breaking change was merged. Yeah, happens. Yeah. I did a similar mention last year on PuppetConf in San Francisco. And while saying that I broke the systemd module, I had another patch or another pull request open for this module, which probably had broken the CI pipeline again, but we learned from our failure, so we informed the people in advance that depend on those modules, and together we could figure out how we could improve the stuff, and yeah, that's very important. Vox Pupuli ISC channel exists since 4-5 years, I think 4 years. And in all this time, some quotes came up that are quite important. One of them is release early, release often. This is not originally from Igor, one of our founders, but he introduced it to Vox Pupuli. Many maintainers are scared to do a new release because they think that it might break for a user, so they try to do as few releases as possible. So each release contains way too much changed code, and of course it breaks for the user, which is very, very bad. And he always encouraged users or maintainers to do releases as often as possible, even when there is only a single pull request merged since the last release. Also, version numbers are cheap, use them. Often people are not only scared about doing a release, but very concerned about doing a major release. So we try to do semantic versioning, and every breaking change should be a major release in our world. And very often we see maintainers that hesitate to merge a pull request with a breaking change, because again, they have fear that it breaks for a user. Of course it will break. It's a breaking change. It's backwards incompatible. But I think it's totally fine to do this if it's properly documented in the README, and if maybe you introduce a deprecation warning in a minor release between. Yeah. What you need to keep in mind is if each of your releases is a major release, something's probably wrong in your code base, and you should reconfigure your architecture. Yeah. And the last quote that we have, DevOps is all about empathy. We had quite some issues, especially in the Ruby gem ecosystem, where we had to head out to different organizations and different maintainers to debug complex dependency cycles and issues because somebody introduced a breaking change in their dependency but only did a patch update, and afterwards every CI pipeline was read and nobody agreed that somebody made a mistake, and everybody said, no, it's not my fault, it's the fault of the other person, stuff like this. And that's not the idea of DevOps as a pattern. So you should always be nice and friendly to each other. You should always be constructive and don't blame other people because everybody makes mistakes. Yeah, I do quite a lot merging on GitHub, and from time to time stuff breaks. That just happens, and that's something that you always need to keep in mind. Yeah. As a quick summary, so we have a lot of tooling available and automation to be very effective on managing Git repos and managing modules. So if you need any help with Git or scaling or upgrading your infrastructure, you can just head out to us and ask us questions. If you use a very orphaned module, just let us know and we might be able to migrate it into our namespace. And very important if you have domain-specific knowledge, for example, for a tool that we automate, or if you're very familiar with Ruby or Python or RSpec, Beaker, whatever, just head out to us and take a look at the pull requests that we have. There is always some stuff to do. Yeah. If you want to help out, we always look for new collaborators and maintainers. There are a bunch of ways to contact us. Preferred is always IRC. Since some months we also have Slack for reasons I don't know. For people that are very old, we also have a mailing list. If you want to contact one of our PMC members, we also have an email list. Direct feedback is also possible, and other talks are linked at the bottom. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tim. Any questions regarding Vox Pupuli? Who wants to start contributing tomorrow? Only questions get stickers.
Can I have the sticker, please?
Awesome. So thank you very much, Tim, and thanks for your work in the community.
Yeah, thanks.
You have no idea how many comments or PRs he's touched. in this organization. It's really crazy. Okay.
You don't want to hear numbers. I think around 12,000 in the past 2 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess so. Okay, thank you.